Good morning, good afternoon, and very good evening to everyone who has joined us today. I am Garima Neja and I lead the product and partner marketing efforts here at Unify, and I shall be your host for the webinar today. I would firstly like to welcome everyone who has taken out time from their busy schedules to join us today. But before we begin, a quick note on the housekeeping. All attendees will be in the listen-only mode. Please type your questions in the Zoom panel and we'll make sure to answer them at the very end. And finally, we'll share the recording with you on your email shortly after the webinar. Before we go ahead with the topic of the day, I shall now take this opportunity to welcome our esteemed panel, Jaime, Lisa, and Anirudh. First of all, I'd like to call on stage Jaime to introduce yourself, your role at EBSCO, and something more about EBSCO as well.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Jaime Barrilleaux. I am the e-learning experience designer for EBSCO's Global Customer Training Services team. I joined EBSCO in 2019, first as an e-learning training specialist. I provide public training and also one-to-one training for some of EBSCO's products and services, in addition to designing and delivering video content, as well as administering both EBSCO Academy and Search Unify, two things that we'll be talking about today. Prior to joining EBSCO, I worked in supporting library systems, also doing kind of community marketing and outreach, as well as member engagement and training for a statewide academic library consortium or library group where I live, which is in the state of Louisiana in the United States. So overall, I have 10 years of experience in the library industry, both in academics, academic libraries, as well as public libraries. So as mentioned, I do work for EBSCO. I work for the part of the EBSCO industries known as EBSCO Information Services. This is we are a library services vendor offering both research content and technology. EBSCO has served the information needs of institutions and organizations globally for over 80 years, and our clients include universities, colleges, hospitals, corporations, governments, K-12 kindergarten through 12th grade schools, and public libraries worldwide. So I'm happy to be here today.
Thank you so much, Jaime. It's a pleasure to have you. Next on, I would like to introduce Lisa. Lisa, would you mind sharing something about yourself and your role at Appinium?
Absolutely. So I'm Lisa Dubernard. I am an independent contractor and my primary client is Appinium. I work with them on a lot of different projects. One is any projects concerning change management, community engagement. So they're Appinium community, including the search experience. And I also help them with their revenue enablement platform. So those are the three areas I work with them about. I was formerly with a Salesforce SI and did a lot of change management roles, rolling out Salesforce globally. Now, as far as Appinium goes, Appinium is really a content enablement platform, and you can see on this big wheel here all of the different workflows that they work with. I'm more working with the green area, the part up here on the top right, which is video coaching, content selling, etc. But most of our clients are working in the bottom right corner, which is more the LMS and the learning experience. So that's a little bit about me and Appinium, and I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you so much, Lisa. We're very, very excited to have you on the panel. And finally, I'll now call on Anirudh Parihar, our cognitive search evangelist at Unify, to briefly introduce himself and Unify.
Thanks, Garima. So, hi, everyone. My name is Anirudh, and I'm thrilled to be part of this conversation today, discussing about future of e-learning. So I've been working in the business development space for about 15 years now, and in the search ecosystem for about 7 years specifically. I am particularly excited about the session today because I've been working with Lisa and Jaime for some time now in different capacities. So EBSCO is one of our customers on the search side, and then Appinium is one of our esteemed partners. So we have a lot of customers together, and this particular use case is enabling content findability for the learners on an e-learning platform is is specifically very close to our heart, and we've been doing that for a lot of our customers. A little bit about Search Unify. So Search Unify is a industry first, has a industry first frag architecture. You might have heard of RAG, which is, has come into being in the last 12 months. You hear about it all the time. But then we have a federated retrieval augmented generation, approach, which we've integrated as, a part of our core search platform. And then the best part is we have a very democratic approach of which large language model you would want to integrate with Search Unify for the Gen AI capabilities. And then this is the base layer, the being able to federate the content, integrate with the Gen AI. And then there are multiple use cases that you can solve very specifically with this platform. So like a cognitive search platform, uh, a virtual assistant that you can run on top of this, knowledge generation, generation of knowledge, and then agent helper. So very specific use cases that are built around content delivery, findability, and enhancing customer experiences.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Anirudh. Thank you so much, Jamie, Lisa, as well, for those introductions. Now, moving ahead, what the topic of the day, it's a no-brainer that customer education is definitely crucial for enhancing customer success, product adoption, and retention, and that is very visible by some research statistics we have on the slide up here. Now, by empowering customers with the right knowledge at the right time, enterprises have the ability to empower those end users to leverage their products effectively and reduce friction and increase customer satisfaction. Comprehensive onboarding and ongoing learning opportunities ensure that customers stay engaged, utilize those new features, and drive deeper product adoption. A great customer education experience thus fosters loyalty by demonstrating a commitment to customer success and enabling proactive problem solving. But however much customer education has an important role to play, over the years, building an ideal customer education learning experience has been seeing its own set of challenges. To name a few, firstly, users struggle with fragmented interfaces that lack cohesion, leading to confusion and a poor learning experience. Secondly, we have seen in a lot of customer and prospect interactions that excessive reliance on in-house platforms may result in limited functionality and scalability compared to specialized third-party solutions. Thirdly, over reliance on static slide based presentations can make learning very, very monotonous and ineffective for end users. Fourthly, poor content organization and limited navigation and findability of that learning content makes it difficult for users to locate the resources they need where they need it at the right time. A poor sales experience can further hamper the overall customer education quality because that can negatively impact the sales process by leaving prospects uninformed or confused about the product benefits. And finally, adding to the list is lack of branding consistency. Educational materials that do not reflect the company's brand can feel very disconnected and impersonal. Now, addressing these challenges involves creating a seamless, engaging, and well organized learning environment, something which EBSCO has very successfully achieved over the years. So, without further ado, let me kickstart the panel discussion for today. Jamie, if I may begin with you, reflecting on your nearly 5+ years of experience at EBSCO, initially as a training specialist, like you mentioned, and now as an experienced designer. Could you share with us the transformation in the learning experience ecosystem from when you first joined, and what significant evolution and changes have you witnessed along the way?
Certainly. So prior to 2019, our learning ecosystem consisted of, the more traditional online instructor-led webinars, archived recordings of those webinars posted across disparate learning portals, and then face-to-face sessions and sometimes all-day workshops on site at the client's site. Then in 2019, our then global director of training wanted to expand the team's e-learning initiatives, and she set out 6 initiatives to guide that expansion. I was then kind of brought onto the team at that point to begin doing more video production, more formalized, polished video production, as well as to kind of help her drive these initiatives forward. Part of that was continuing to host what we had already been doing so successfully, which was hosting those online sessions, both public and custom one-to-one sessions, as well as providing on-site training for those clients that preferred that method, or even just when the content itself was, more applicable to that method. As far as the initial e-learning initiative she set out, we started with the life cycle series, which is number 3 on the slide, because it was an easy way to move into that more formalized and polished video production process, which our team had not really had much experience with prior to that. And I will also acknowledge I didn't have a significant amount of experience prior to joining the team. So she took me on kind of and allowed me to learn throughout this as well. We started investigating learning platforms in fall of 2019 to begin, possibly identifying where we could start consolidating and hosting our content, like those archived recordings and life cycle series. But we also kind of wanted to move more into the initiative where we could start providing guided learning paths for our users. We also was looking for something that would integrate with our Salesforce environment. So, again, we started that kind of very slowly, just figuring out what was out there and available. But then, a little thing called COVID happened. And we actually then had to kind of shift our focus much more rapidly because on-site training was gone for a significant period of time. And we have even continued to kind of not host on-site training as often as we did in the past in some regions. So we needed to really try to find a replacement for providing that more in-depth comprehensive training. So we spent more time, we kind of then ramped up our attention on the learning paths part and adopted Appinium in early spring 2020. After we adopted Appinium, we conducted a needs assessment and preferences survey from participants of our previous training sessions. We sought volunteers across our global team and then developed 5 English language learning paths and went to beta with that in July 2020. We had another round of edits after that. We got a lot of really great feedback through that beta testing, both for the content and the experience. And then we officially launched EBSCO Academy in October of 2020. So you can see that, while this can be a process, and obviously there are some, rigorous research that needs to come into play, it doesn't necessarily have to be a long process, getting an environment stood up for your learners. We've received a lot of positive feedback about our learning environment, and we do continue to see an increase in usage on average. I think this one indicates an increasing acceptance and dependence on more self-paced asynchronous e-learning content across our client base in many regions, either as a primary means of learning or even just a continuation or supplement to any live training they've participated in. We've also encountered situations where some clients did request on-site training, but through a series of conversations offering the various e-learning options that they, perhaps didn't know existed previously, they've decided to take advantage of the online options because it's less disruptive to their space, less overhead in setting up on their end, and often easier to get people together.
Awesome. That warms up our conversation. And thank you, Jamie, first of all, for sharing your remarkable journey. I think it's very, very evident that your team's dedication to innovation and adaptability has led to some remarkable progress. But following your transition now into the role of an e-learning experience designer, what were the primary initial objectives which you established when you set out on this journey? And what specific strategies would you like to share with our audience today, which you definitely leveraged at EBSCO to achieve those goals?
Yeah, sure. So as noted, we had those initiatives set out in 2019, and we continue to use those as a guide, though we have revised some of them. We've changed a little bit of what we do with one, and we have, kind of put one on an indefinite hold. But still having that, overarching plan really kind of helped drive forward. And as we then moved into each one of those initiatives, we were able to kind of evaluate the specific goals around that initiative, the needs and dependencies that we had. Then when I moved into my new role, almost 2 years into EBSCO Academy being live, I knew it was time to start evaluating the platform that we were currently on and where we stood in terms of using it effectively. So at that point, we needed to ask ourselves, what are we using? How are we using it? And are we using it well? Because, sometimes you can implement a feature, but you're not necessarily using it as effectively as you can be. And does it still align with our overall goals? Do we still need to align with the user needs and preferences that we initially identified? COVID did a lot to change learner behavior. And, as I mentioned earlier, we're starting to see more of a shift into an acceptance of those asynchronous opportunities. So, maybe there are things we now need to do to kind of help that behavior change. And then we also needed to identify what we weren't using and then how we could implement it or it not. Maybe it was a feature that we didn't necessarily need for our learning environment. And then we also needed to prioritize what we needed in terms of adoption and development. So to accomplish that, that goal or strategy, I went through all of Appinium's release notes and roadmaps published on their community. They are a great vendor in terms of doing that, a great partner. They make all of that information fully transparent for you. So I went through, I built a feature list on a Monday.com board. The feature list includes an opportunity and problem statement. It's really kind of important when you are, moving forward in this that you identify what opportunities exist, what problems exist, and then also include any internal or external dependencies. I then worked from that to build an effort matrix, which helps us identify prioritization. But we are a global team, as I mentioned, and I am US born and US based. So, I can at times have a very US centric perspective. And that means I can't speak for all of our learners. So I then proposed that we begin hosting a domain demo, is what I called it, routinely with our global team. We decided to do that on a quarterly cadence and actually hosted the first one in January of this year. I think it was a great success. We got a lot of really great feedback from our team about how useful they found that and also just how informative they found it because it, I think, made them more connected to, EBSCO and EBSCO Academy in a way that maybe they had not previously been. Because I do have more familiarity with the platform and features, I did go through the list and effort matrix and identify features for a kind of yes, no neutral decision. And then I also identified 3 large projects that we could open for discussion and also, perhaps scope. We used Teams as our internal meeting tool. And so I used some of the polling features in there to get a lot of interactive feedback during the demo, including ranking the projects in order of priority. That really helped us decide what we needed to move into the work list or task list for the next quarter. This helps position us to move forward on more system level evaluations, which is always important in a program like this. You want to make sure that you are evaluating it routinely. Right now, the evaluation process that we're currently reviewing is how we are generating the content embedded in our learning paths. I'll talk a little bit more on that later, but this is partly because the interfaces that we train on are changing rapidly. Our SaaS products are moving into more agile development, and in that way, we have to kind of match that agile content development. So having this kind of set list of features, which I update after every release, allows us to kind of go out and investigate that feature list and then determine, does Appinium have something to support our evolving experience and needs, or does this need, to be submitted as an idea or an enhancement request? And now that I oversee Search Unify, I use a very similar process for Search Unify platform upgrades, projects, and analytics requests. So I do get internal analytics requests. And if I identify something I think we should implement there, but I can't necessarily decide on my own because it will impact multiple teams, I always bring it to our stakeholder group for discussion and further investigation. So it's really about collaboration overall.
Of course. Thanks, Jamie. And it's very interesting that you mentioned two technologies out there. So I was recently reading this research from TSI, which says that learning technology overall is burdened by what they term as technical debt. And as is very visible from the research I have up here, the absence of options for either a best of breed technology or an excessive reliance, like I mentioned at the very start, on homegrown tools or in-house native platforms emerges as a prominent contributor to this debt. Jamie, once you were going through this process at EBSCO and evaluating these platforms. Reflecting on your experience, do you find the insights from this data resonating with your own journey? And any tips and tricks for our audience on how you navigated and addressed this technical debt?
So I would say those insights certainly resonate with my overall systems experience, though maybe not as specifically with our experience with EBSCO Academy. We were lucky enough to have very little technical debt in terms of learning technology within our team outside of an outdated video conferencing platform that we were using. In terms of that video conferencing platform, it was fairly easy to address that. We did evaluate some of the industry standard platforms, including upgrading the one that we were on, and then also investigated integrations with Appinium because we were live with EBSCO Academy at that point. We ultimately chose to migrate to the platform that most of our customers were using since it would be something familiar to them. And our existing content was downloaded from our old video conferencing platform and published in Academy by then. So we really didn't have to worry about migrating or losing any data. So like I said, it was fairly easy and we were fairly lucky in that regard. We do have dependencies on older homegrown or more heavily customized systems that feed information into our Salesforce environment. These dependencies can sometimes limit our capabilities as it can require custom development or the data is not available or not easy to sync. Or it requires us to use workarounds and more manual processes. We are lucky enough to work very closely with our Salesforce development team, and we support each other's efforts as best we can, as quickly as we can, but always remain respectful of each team's, bandwidth and priorities. But the training team ultimately evaluates need versus effort and whether workarounds exist when deciding what to prioritize before we try to escalate any work outside of our own team. As far as choosing Appinium, we went through a rigorous research process, as I kind of inferred a little earlier. We identified multiple platforms, some that our clients were already using and were used to. We also focused on platforms that were integrated seamlessly within Salesforce, since that was the environment we were going to launch Academy from. We did ask, do we need a single platform? We are trying to provide a single learning ecosystem, but do we actually need a single platform to do that? Or can we use multiple platforms to manage the content and experience and kind of just, feed it into our Salesforce community? We did ultimately decide to pursue platforms that were integrated directly into Salesforce and then, kind of built our list from those that were listed in the Salesforce App Exchange. We used a scoreboard to score the platforms based on estimated cost, available features, and reviews listed in the App Exchange. We then identified, platforms for demos and contacted the vendors. We had several discussions with Steve, the founder and CEO of Appinium. He is a really great guy. He's very informative. He's always open to questions. And what we really, really liked about it is that he was very open about where the system was then and where he actually saw it going, what he envisioned it doing. And we really liked that it was a Salesforce native platform and it was something that we could grow and innovate alongside. But, in my experience, the process is ultimately the same, whether you have technical debt or not. Existing technical debt needs to undergo the same rigorous review alongside the new technologies. But it does add, a layer of complexity, of course. That review also needs to evaluate what the migration process would look like, because you always have to worry about existing data. Data is the big thing. It's what you need to function properly as a business. And so you have to consider, can I get my data out? Sometimes yes, sometimes no, but even yes, is it in a format that's actually readable in my new system, or do I need to undergo some kind of data conversion process? What's going to happen then? What does my data loss possibly look like? What are short-term and long-term costs of migrating to a new system versus just staying put for a time? Sometimes, even though a tool is, best of breed and it could do what you want, just, all of the underlying factors just make it hard at that time. And then you also have to factor in workarounds and integration. So I mentioned we do have some technical debt to some of our information systems, and we have to, evaluate that anytime we are looking to implement a new feature. And so you would also need to do the same when just looking to implement a new tool altogether. What are the short-term and long-term costs of that? And then, can my existing resources, and I cannot emphasize enough that this also includes your human resources, support the new technology, or do new resources need to be acquired? And then, so basically that means cost is always a factor. But I've been on projects where the best of breed technology checked all of those boxes, and it was just ultimately cost prohibitive to do it. And again, I can't also emphasize it enough. It's not always about the direct cost of the platform itself, but the underlying factors like data migration and integrations. So you just need to be thorough. You need to discuss internally, discuss externally, discuss again, but ultimately you need to be biased for action. You need to decide, okay, at what point do we stop talking, make a decision, whether that decision is to stay or that decision is to move, and then you set your plans in place for that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jamie. I'm sure our audience is taking detailed notes around how your methodical approach demonstrated the importance of considering both, I think, those short-term gains and, of course, those long-term sustainable goals around technology adoption. Lisa, if I may pass the baton on to you, and drawing from your extensive experience collaborating with various organizations, what critical factors in your opinion are important, which our audience should prioritize when contemplating a transition to a specialized purpose-built platform like Appinium over the utilization of in-house tools?
Yes, certainly. So most of Appinium's clients do choose Appinium because their strategy is calling for a learning experience that is 100% native to Salesforce with all the advantages that that brings. But in my experience as a change management leader, I think that these are the three key factors that need to be prioritized when you're determining your learning strategy. And that first one up there is, looking really closely at the purpose of your portal or community. Why are the users even coming there? What's driving them to that portal? Maybe they're coming there because they need or want to get certified on a product. Maybe they are users of the product, they're consumers, and they just need to find quick answers in the flow of their work. They can be some sort of student who wants to learn how to do something or to do something better. So Appinium's clients are certainly all these different types of users and learners, like employees, partners, and clients. So it's really important that you understand who these users are and what is driving them to come to the community. So that was idea number one. Idea number two is really diving deeper into your learners and considering all the different types of ways these learners want to consume content. So Appinium, being a content enablement platform, it supports a lot of different workflows beyond the traditional LMS or learning management system. So you may still want to have traditional structured courses that might result in a certificate or a badge. You may also want to have on-demand content that might be similar to a YouTube-like experience, really short and easily digestible, easy to find and consume. You also may want to find out that your content should be part of your knowledge base. So maybe you want to embed that video content in your knowledge base articles. You may also still have instructor-led training or webinars that you want to also track. And you may even have content that's created by the learners. We have some clients who are using Appinium's video coaching functionality where they are actually submitting example pitches or things, and those end up being embedded in the learning experience. So all of these different ways, just need to consider which ways your learners want to consume the content. Then lastly, I would say, once you know those two things, then start designing what you want that user experience to look like to support those first two. Many times the experience is driven by search because the customers come into a community and they want to find an answer. So in this case, you would put that search bar front and center on the page, and then that content should be easy to find, and the learner or user should only see the content that is meant for them to be able to see. Maybe there's a user who bought a specific product, and so sharing rules are given so that they can see content about how to use that specific product. So they're not overwhelmed with too much content. So those are the three things that I would start prioritizing if looking at a learning strategy.
Thank you for that, Lisa, and thank you for breaking down those considerations into very systematic points. Jamie, as we delve deeper into the essence of a robust e-learning experience, if I may add one more element to the mix here, which is content. The same research I quoted before from TSI indicates that creating 1 hour of e-learning content demands approximately 80 hours of pre-development work, which translates to an estimated cost of 10,000 US dollars. Now, given these whopping figures, how do you approach the establishment of a framework for content creation, revision, and of course, distribution within EBSCO?
Yep. So as I mentioned earlier, we are currently re-evaluating this now, but I can share the approach we've taken so far to highlight the easy wins and some of the pain points, some of which has led to this, re-evaluation. The first thing that we did is established a content project tracker that has remained the same. The tool itself has changed a little bit. Currently, we are using the Microsoft Lists feature since we are a Microsoft we primarily use Microsoft tools at our organization. But team members have to list the projects that they're currently working on. The project owner is then responsible for continuing to track the state of that content and determine when it needs to be updated and by when. So there's not one person that's kind of responsible for reviewing that. We each all own our own content. And our managers have, access to that. So one, they can work with them if the content owner needs to have the project reassigned, or even determine if the content is no longer needed and just needs to be, archived. Our managers also then will often review the content project tracker when they are working with us to have, our performance objectives discussions, how much content did we create, because we do have certain goals set toward that across our instructors. And then also, what that looks like in terms of what we prioritize for content creation in the following, quarter. We do continue to host live open sessions, as I've mentioned, and so we offer archived recordings of those in EBSCO Academy. That's an easy win, and as I said, that's kind of the first piece of content that we migrated to Academy, and it was easy to just kind of stand that up and let that be available while we continue to move forward with, our e-learning path development. It's something we do every month, and each instructor can just plan to record a new version when we know significant changes were demonstrated. This also covers a gap if we do have existing content available in the e-learning path structure. It provides a gap while we're working to get that e-learning content updated. And we do include those on the tracker in a way to ensure that we're not duplicating content, because we do often host the same or similar sessions across all of our regional teams. And so, we want to make sure that we're not basically publishing 5 archived recordings that pretty much cover the same thing. So we'll generally have like one person who is responsible for doing that, but others can of course step in when they need to. Then, part of my job as the e-learning experience designer is to also then create or update targeted learning content for very specific needs. The content could be video content or even just checklists and infographics. I will do this based on something I identify in our Search Unify data. Sometimes it's just kind of general search queries that are coming through. Sometimes it's case data. I'll also do it by request. So, some of my team members may say, oh, hey, I have this really cool idea. I think it would be very helpful if we had something like this on Academy. And, so I'll work with them as a subject matter expert to kind of construct and develop that. We'll also get that from our sales organization or sometimes even product management. Those tend to be more formal and they take more development time. So I will often have many, many projects in the works. And then when a new request comes through, I sometimes have to evaluate all of my projects that are currently in progress and figure out what takes priority over something else. So, for example, I'm currently prioritizing a shorter training video over a longer comprehensive e-learning path simply because it's a new feature. It's something that we are working to get all of our clients moved over to, and we really need to get them educated and make resources available. So it's an ever shifting list of things that I'm working on. And then we have, the e-learning paths, and this is where we have experienced the most pain points. When we initially began developing these modules, we did set out a rigorous group of guidelines. And I say group because it was a lot of guidelines. It was a lot of rules and formal requirements. Some struggled to kind of get a handle on the process. Those who developed it sometimes struggle to get a handle on the process, and also the selected technology that we told everybody they needed to kind of develop the videos in. But it's no longer conducive to our current product development cycles. And as I mentioned earlier, we'll sometimes use archived recordings to fill in the gaps. So in some ways, we've been duplicating efforts. So we've determined through those experiences and feedback that the current process is too rigorous, and we need to figure out how we might work more iteratively, alongside our products. So we're looking at how we can embed our open video content, like our archived instructor-led recordings, into the paths so that people who need that structure, they need to know how to go from point A to point Z, have that kind of outline through the e-learning courses and e-learning paths. But keeping the content open for those who don't, who just have a question and they want to go find a video and watch it. So we're working to identify where we can consolidate content in topics that, or consolidate topics and content that's too dispersed, or maybe even split content that's too comprehensive, because one, that'll help us develop more agilely as well, because rather than needing to update a 20-minute video, we may actually only need to update a 2-minute video, which, significantly lessens development time. And then we are also working to identify gaps in our existing content, particularly for our new interfaces, and figure out, what we need to start developing in terms of that. So to kind of streamline that process, I'm now working on a series of branded templates and PowerPoints. And then I'm taking those templates and creating background images that producers can pull into video production software. It creates a consistent brand across our training team, and ensuring that we're aligning with our company's brand and guidelines. But it empowers each individual team member to really kind of work in the way and in the technology that they feel most comfortable with. Some of our instructors are very good working off the cuff, just kind of recording a more informal, formal instructor-led recording, to an empty room, where those like me kind of need the script to work through because you might hem and haw too much and it then takes too much time editing the audio. So that was probably the biggest lesson learned. Just really let people work in the tools that they're most comfortable doing so. So we're also beginning to investigate new content production tools, some that might help streamline the processes. So ultimately, while I don't have any definitive recommendations around specific tools, specific processes, I really kind of just want to call this out because I think it's easy to get used to or attached to something, and it may no longer be right for the job. It may no longer be the correct workflow. So as content developers, we just need to be open to the possibility of change and routinely evaluate our delivery workflow and tools.
Awesome. Jamie, it's very, very impressive. Thank you for sharing that journey. It's really impressive to know and understand how much time you and the team at EBSCO Academy are investing in creating that quality content. But then, if I may ask, how do you overcome basically the next hurdle, which is content discoverability? How have you tackled this challenge at EBSCO and ensured that all that meticulously created and curated content effectively reaches and resonates with the right audience at the right time?
So this actually was a really big challenge for us when we first launched EBSCO Academy, because for about the first 2 years of EBSCO Academy, we had no discoverability through search functionality. Our environment was using the Salesforce native search functionality, It worked great for our knowledge articles, but we couldn't expose Academy content to it because, not all of our content is openly available. And it wasn't able to honor the special permissions that we had on certain pieces of content. So one of the first methods we used was the Lifecycle series. We launched this initiative before we adopted Appinium, but migrated those videos to Appinium as soon as possible to start driving more usage to EBSCO Academy. And then that brought the learner into the ecosystem, and it allowed them to kind of then, through the Appinium search and browse tools that were available, to find other content they were interested in. We've also worked to embed EBSCO Academy links to EBSCO Academy content in some of our knowledge articles, and many of them include kind of a general statement at the bottom to explore further learning options that are available through EBSCO Academy. So it also gives them a little prompt to kind of get in there. And we worked with our internal training teams. So we have, teams that work specifically with groups within our organization to train them on our products. We worked with them to embed links to EBSCO Academy content in our employee LMS. It gives the EBSCO team members access to the training team's product knowledge and expertise, but also awareness of what's out there to share with others. And so that really kind of leads me to the biggest driver, which is our human resources. And that's still true today. We have people across the organization that copy share links from the platform and include them in direct emails to clients. Our training team routinely does training follow-up after we have, a pretty intensive session, and we'll go out and curate all of the information across both our knowledge articles and our Academy content and send that out to those clients that we've been working with. We've had clients who have come in and found Academy resources and linked directly to them from their staff web pages. So we do try to encourage the use of the URLs that point to the videos embedded in catalogs, because that also exposes other relevant content in the playlist. And then, of course, we adopted Search Unify to then expand the search functionality on our Salesforce platform and make our content discoverable. We initially launched with a search box on the main page, and then earlier this year, I worked with them to deploy a custom search box on EBSCO Academy. So we've been able to work with them, one, because they honor the permissions that are needed, but also I was able to work with them to kind of customize the experience so that our authenticated only metadata is exposed, but then our users are prompt to authenticate upon clicking. So it's surfaced more of our information out there.
And Jamie, any impact you would like to share with our audience here? I know the strategies, the mix sound very, very interesting, but how have you seen the improvement in the findability of e-learning content based on your user feedback?
Yeah, so we actually, right after we launched Search Unify, within about a month, but over the first, quarter to first half, we saw the biggest spike in quarterly usage. It was really quite fun. My manager, who does a lot of our data, was very, very excited about it, and she was sharing it with everybody. And from the session tracking details with Search Unify, we can see that learners are finding the content through the search. We actually saw, and I did forget to share this data with you, but right after we launched the Academy search box, we went from like 0 to 700 searches in like 2 weeks, which I thought was pretty fun, considering up to that point they had no search box on the EBSCO Academy homepage. But we can still see that our direct page views account for the majority of our content discovery and access. One thing we do struggle with is identifying the source of those direct page views. Is it coming in from knowledge articles? Is it coming in from marketing campaigns? Is it those staff web pages? So yeah, so it's just exciting to see, the searches that's happening. And also just kind of see how our traffic and our numbers continue to grow there.
Awesome. So turning on to some of the metrics, but before I turn on to metrics, Anirudh, with your expertise in search and extensive experience collaborating with numerous customers through various Search Unify and Appinium implementations, can you please, for our audience, elaborate on some of the primary value propositions that a tool like Search Unify offers to users of Appinium, and how do you believe these functionalities can enhance the user experience?
Sure. Sure. So the primary value proposition that Search Unify brings to the table, especially for e-learning platforms like Appinium, is focused on your learning experience through AI-powered search and personalization, right? So uh, for the first part, like how do we do that, like in terms of personalization? So if I am a learner, then not just being able, depending on my search or through navigation, can the system automatically recommend certain learning plans, learning content, media based on my previous journeys or based on my behavior, right? So Search Unify is able to capture that data and then also able to recommend. Second is, I would say, is content discovery, through advanced filtering and faceting. So you may have a lot of metadata on your content, but then how do you make it easier for the end learner to click through certain facets and get to a certain piece of content that they're actually looking for? And third, I would say, is unified search experience, right? Not all the time all the content maybe in your learning management system, in your CRM. Jamie talked about collaboration, right? There are other teams in the system that are curating a lot of good content, which essentially you're asking your learners, oh, we don't own that, you may need to go to a YouTube channel or our corporate site to look for that information. So how do you ensure that Search Unify is able to, or the search is able to bring that unified content into that one screen that the learner is using? And the other part I would say is contextual recommendations, right? So once a learner is looking for something, then based on all the machine learning, all the patterns for that individual user and for the other users, other learners, can the search give some contextual recommendation. So if you're looking for this, you may be also interested in looking for that, and all those patterns is what the machine learning recognize, creates a cluster and then recommends. And lastly, I would say what Search Unify, the real value that Search Unify brings for the admins is actionable insights, being able to actually see how the end user and learner is consuming their content. What are they searching for when they click on a certain kind of a media, right? So also find that mapping of what end user is searching versus what they're clicking and how they're getting to the content, and then being also able to take some action, tweak the results, based on what the analytics that they're seeing. One thing that I would want to call out, which I think Lisa, Jamie also made part of their presentation early on, was because Search Unify is built natively for Salesforce and for Appinium. So we're not just dependent on the profiles that you may have built for your learners on the Salesforce platform, but then if you have like more granular permissions on individual records, right? This learning is for a certain geo, for a certain user type. Search is automatically able to look at those, sharing rules, and then the learner only sees content that is most relevant, that they're allowed to see based on that, based on their profile, not just Salesforce but also on individual records or learning plans. What I can also do is I can quickly share my screen and walk you through how the search would look like. Karima, just let me know if you're able to see my screen.
Yes.
Okay, so this is a sandbox environment we built together with Lisa from Appinium. So this is a Salesforce portal, and then what we've also done is we've dragged the Search Unify search component onto it. So if I were to do a search now, the search, rather than going to the native Salesforce platform, would come to Search Unify, and then there are these AI based recommendations. So it's not just telling me what I've searched in the past, but what are the, based on what I'm trying to search, what are the best queries that I could be alluding to, right? So it is trying to recommend, and then when I press the search button, I go to the search page, then there are a lot of things that are happening on the search page itself. So like for steps to add a user to POC, then I may have a lot of content coming from different sources, but I'm limited to only content that is most relevant to my query. So search engine is taking control of the ranking, the algorithm is taking control of that, and then the filters that are built are more dynamic in nature. So based on what you've searched, what you've selected, they remain on the screen. And then the look and feel of the search page depends upon like what kind of content you're trying to host, right? If these are media items, are you able to give them as thumbnail? If there are PDFs, right, where you would generally will not be able to do that with the native Salesforce search, the Search Unify can look at the individual PDFs that are in your content, and then they just bring them up right with the results. So if you click on it, you are able to open the PDF directly. There are preview buttons, so without leaving the search experience, you are able to trigger and look at what the content is. And then in terms of like federation that I talked about earlier, this is content not just coming from Salesforce or Appinium. These could be your cases based on who I am. This could be content coming from outside Salesforce as well. And then from a machine learning perspective, if I show you like this recommended articles widget, or this could be recommended learning content, we put this widget on the search page, but essentially you can pick this widget and put this anywhere on your portal. What this is doing is, based on what the user is searching, it is actively recommending content to the end user. So yeah, that's a quick tour of how the search page would look like and all the different functionalities.
Thank you so much, Anirudh. I hope that gives a quick glimpse and teaser of what's in store for our audience. But of course, it's often said that metrics drive behavior, and improvement hinges on, of course, effective measurement of what's working and what's not. Lisa, I know Appinium has always emphasized the concept of a learning record store and delivering contextual metrics that impact those learning KPIs. For our audience, can you help us delve deeper into some of the specific metrics that Appinium offers for e-learning organizations and how those align with the organizational objectives?
Sure. So first, I like to look at the organization's overall objectives and then determine what are the behaviors we are trying to get our users to do to meet those objectives. Well, that sounds kind of vague, so let's look at this more specifically. For example, we may want our partners to sell more of our product, so increasing revenue. Well, what are some of the behaviors that might be required to make that happen? Maybe we want the products to know more about the partner to know more about our products. So we may assign them learning. Are they completing the learning? And then if they are completing the learning, is it marrying up to, are they actually selling more product if they're completing the learning? So all that type of data needs to be able to be tracked. Could also have an objective that you might want to lower support costs. So are your users who are self-servicing via your online experience, are they able to find the answers they want and then not have to maybe reach out to support or create a case? We're actually using Search Unify within the Appinium community now to surface recommended content on the case submission. That's a case deflection, and we can decide what types of content appears there, not just knowledge articles. It could be media, it could be learning plans, whatever we want. And then not only could it keep the user from having to take the time to submit a case because they found the answer, it can also free up your support staff because really simple cases get deflected and they will have more time to work on more complex cases. So that's number one. Number two is I do recommend that people look at the out-of-the-box reports and dashboards that come with Appinium. There's a lot of things that are there, and then try to match up what are the questions we're trying to find answers to, and how does it marry up to the reports and dashboards that exist already. Sometimes it's just very minor tweaks to those reports to make them work. So starting with what content or media are the users consuming, What learning plans or courses are they taking? Is there a place in the learning plan that they just stop? They get maybe 50% done and they just don't ever complete? And then why is that? Is the course too long? It needs to be broken down more or chunked more? Looking at assessments, which questions are they not answering? Or is it because we are not covering that content well, or is it because the question was bad? There's a lot of things that we can look at in that side. And then finally, we were talking more about the search metrics and Search Unify. But I look at the Search Unify dashboard a lot because I think it's very powerful. And certainly at the most basic level, I want to know, what are they looking for? What are the terms they're looking for? Which searches are not resulting in any results at all? Which search results they're deciding not to click on anything because they don't find it helpful. Once we have that knowledge, then we can see are the best pieces of media or knowledge-based articles at going up to the top. Do I need to fine-tune the orders of that searches? Do I need to fine-tune the content or create new content? In other words, are we ensuring that the content that we have is helping our clients resolve any issues that they have as quickly as possible without having to submit a case or using the product even better so that they will renew it?
Thanks, Lisa. I know, Lisa, you've mentioned some of your favorites. Anirudh, any favorite reports of yours, which basically help end users understand those search related insights, and content creators like Jamie understand those knowledge gaps itself.
Yeah. So, I mean, Search Unify offers about 50 plus reports out of the box. And, these we've built working with professionals like Jamie and Lisa. We baked them into the product. And then we also allow you to do your custom reporting. But then, reports are like Lisa also mentioned, right? You could be using this for ticket deflection only as academy. So there could be multiple stakeholders looking at the same portal with a different lens. So we've tried to cater analytics from from multiple perspectives. So if it is ticket deflection, then we have like implicit and explicit deflections that you get from your content, which is helping your end user self-help. And then there are reports which specifically talk about content gap analysis. People are searching for this, but most of the time the search ends up saying no results found. We have content, it's just that for different geos certain words are spelled in a different way. There is a certain pattern that our users in a certain geo use to get to the content. So can we do some kind of mapping within the search so we don't have to rewrite the content? And that also brings me to the second part, right? When you get all these insights, obviously you will make some changes to your content looking at the patterns and the reports, but then there is a lot of controls that the search engine gives you out of the box, right? So you can do a lot of tuning for our known issues. We don't care what the search engine thinks. This piece of content needs to rank at number one, right? Because you own the content. For a certain kind of a learning plan, you would want to boost certain kind of media or a track, right? So search engine is not only giving you insights, but then there are a lot of actions you can take within the admin to control how the search results would look like. Because at the end of the day, right, it's not Google where you're not able to control. This is your content, what needs to get a little better ranking than the other. So Search Unify gives you that availability to take control over the results as well.
Thanks, Anirudh. And closing the loop on metrics, Jamie, which of these metrics you and the team at EBSCO utilize the most to gauge the effectiveness and success of your e-learning initiatives?
Yeah, so that's really a hard question to answer and could go on endlessly about it. So I'll just kind of keep it high level and short. So of course we do look at the numbers. For example, we'll evaluate attendance records versus canceled sessions for our open public sessions to determine is demand actually there, or can our instructors pivot and focus on, another piece of content. We'll also look at, course completions. So we'll look at course registrations versus course views to completion for course activities. And then compare that to our views in our open, catalog content that's kind of dovetailing into our reevaluation of, embedding that content in the structures, because in some cases we're finding that the open video content is serving the need. Therefore, why are we spending more time, working on this? We also use case data from Search Unify's session tracking details to develop our solution-focused content. That's very specifically where we are looking to, we call them lightning lessons in our community, where we're looking at a very specific topic and we are trying to get them to the point in, 5 minutes or less, giving them some of the background, but mostly about how to do what they need to do. But ultimately, I am also a qualitative researcher. So to me, it doesn't just come down to the numbers. A lot of times it's about your instincts, knowing that something is going to be important now, even or important in the future, even though views may be kind of low right now. Watch your trend predictions. As I've mentioned, our company is developing new user interfaces. So while some of our content has been kind of gradually shifting to where we're seeing more use in that content, and our classic interfaces had higher level content, we're able to kind of monitor that prediction and that trend, and then focus more of our attention on new user interface production. But ultimately, I think it just comes down to listening to your learners. Listen to the questions they ask, the concerns that they have when you're communicating and talking with them. And then that can really kind of help drive your own content development as well. So again, that's why I say it's not always just the numbers.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's about what you're hearing and seeing.
Thanks, Jimmy. I think trusting your instincts and gut is one of my favorite points on the slide up there. And my gut says that no webinar in 2024 is complete without having one question around generative AI. So moving on to the concluding segment of this webinar, Lisa, if I may, basically, if you can share for our audience how Appinium has basically been propagating, leveraging AI for your clients.
Sure. So we have a lot of discussions with customers, and everybody's very interested in, AI. And I'm really seeing those discussions go into 3 different buckets. The first is, more generative AI in ways to create or enhance content. Then there's personalizing recommendations of content. And then there's using AI, of course, as part of the search experience. So for the generative AI, and again, for me as a content creator, that's what I'm thinking about. I've seen a lot of tools out, and there's thousands of new tools out there. Like one I saw the other day was I just uploaded a script to a website, and they had this magic actress just read it out for me. So, and sometimes I do want to have a speaker in my video, and I don't want to be that speaker, but I don't want a headless PowerPoint either. So that's a tool that could help me develop something that looks pretty good really, really fast. Another tool that I tested out is made by H5P, and they have a product called Smart Import. And basically you just drag an MP4 player into it. It auto transcribes it, reads the data, suggests key concepts. It writes question sets, drag and drop exercises, summaries, all of that. And then I can tweak that and publish it. So, so I think that these tools are not going to replace our content developers. They're just going to allow new types of more fun interactions in their content that they just didn't have time to do before. So I'm also seeing, the idea of personalizing or recommending content based on data in Salesforce is really key. And Appinium is prioritizing this on the roadmap. Of course, this is going to really require that you have good content and, of course, good data about your users. And Appinium has this thing called recommended content that's part of their revenue enablement package. So if we can go to the next slide, I want to show you what that looks like. So this is a screenshot of an opportunity in which a seller has open on their screen. And over here on the right, you can see that it's recommending content to that seller to either consume or to send out to their prospects, so that they can progress this opportunity to the next stage. So this particular opportunity is in the qualification stage. So it's recommending content to the seller on how to qualify an opportunity. So we have a lot of discussions with people about that. And with the syncing of like Einstein Analytics to this, we're just going to see that explode, along with what we're doing with the Search Unify partnership.
That seems really, really exciting. And to close the discussion today, Anirudh, any final teaser of some new cool features, especially with respect to generative AI, which you want to tease to the audience today before we wrap up?
Absolutely, absolutely. Let me just quickly share my screen. Yeah, so I'll just use the same query step to add a user to POC, regular search, how it would look like. But with Search Unify, what we are also doing is with these Gen AI components, is not just giving you a search page, but if you look at the top of the search page, we are able to give you generative responses, right? Now this is very, very powerful, and the way we are doing it is even more interesting, right? So one, like in the start of the presentation, we talked about our democratic approach to letting our end user, which is our customers, use their own LLM models. So our entire approach is that we are not dependent on a chat GPT or a Azure model to know steps to add a user to a POC for Appinium, for whoever the end customer is. We're not expecting the LLM to know the answer or who that user is and what they are, what should be the answer for this question for this particular user, right? If there is some gated content. So the approach that we have is we are using these large language models only for their linguistic capabilities. So we are telling the large language model, I know what the answer is, I being the search engine, I know who this user is, what they're allowed to see. Here is the answer. It may be in a long PDF format, it may be in an article format, it may be a video. So I'm saying summarize this, extract that information and print this in a nice readable format, right? So that's the real value we as Search Unify bring to the table. We are allowing our end users, customers, to bring their own large language models, which could be homegrown or using a third party, and then we allow them to integrate that with the search engine, and they are able to use it. So this is piece number one of so this is not a teaser, this is generally available. We have customers who are using it, but then what we are also doing is in our virtual assistant ecosystem, we are also integrating the Gen AI. So there is a conversation based flow. So this chatbot is powered by Search Unify. It sits on top of that same search engine, which is indexing your content. So other than you being able to just create a story for your end user, through which they navigate, it gives you a response. Even if you were to do like a open text search, then this is where that generative component can come into picture, which is looking at the document, summarizing it for you, and then also saying that I created this response using this particular document. And the story doesn't stop here, right? This virtual agent is way more powerful, right? You could build stories to say, get me access to a certain learning track, and you can trigger it off right from this bot. Create a case on my behalf. So using all those APIs to Service Cloud and Salesforce Community Cloud, we can look at who that user is, what roles and permissions do they have, and then present a different menu for every new customer, who is interacting with the bot. So this is a quick teaser. Obviously, we can set up more time to go in details how these different use cases, how we are building for the integrations with the Gen AI.
Cool. That sounds pretty awesome. Thank you so much, Anirudh. Thank you so much, Jamie. Thank you so much, Lisa, for all your insightful contributions and engaging discussions today. It's been truly an enriching experience exploring the diverse strategies and innovations which we saw in today's webinar, and I'm sure our audience agrees as well. And thank you to our audience today for spending our time. My deepest apologies for running over by 10 minutes, but I'm sure you're going away with some great best practices and notes from today's discussion. Let's stay connected, continue this conversation offline, and thank you so much again.